Discover the incredible, heartwarming reply of a single dad janitor mocked by a billionaire 3. Mike woke before dawn, just as he did every day, the chill of the morning air biting at his skin. As a single father and janitor in a bustling Midwestern city, his life was a constant cycle of early mornings and late nights. He worked multiple jobs to provide for his spirited teenage daughter, Emily. Every penny mattered, and Mike held tightly to the belief that if he kept pushing, his struggles would create a path for her dreams. That night was a gala event hosted by the billionaire Carter, a man whose lavish lifestyle made Mike feel like a distant shadow. The grand venue was filled with the clinking of glasses, laughter floated in the air, and shimmering lights danced across the bustling crowd. From his post in the back, Mike watched as the elite exchanged hollow pleasantries. He felt a pang in his heart, knowing that they didn't see the truth beneath the surface. Carter took the stage, radiating power and arrogance. Let's give a round of applause for the unsung heroes of our society, the janitors, the waiters, the losers. His voice thundered through the room, lashing out at men and women who fought every day to put food on their tables. Mike's heart sank as the laughter rang through the hall. He felt Emily's hurt gaze from across the room, tears shimmering in her eyes. That moment was a crushing blow, igniting a fierce resolve within him. Back home, their routine was brightened by shared moments. They cooked breakfast together, the smell of pancakes swirling in the air, and late-night talks filled with dreams and laughter. But as financial struggles piled up, so did the tension. Emily's grades slipped. She retreated into silence, unable to bear the shame of her father's public humiliation. One evening, emotions boiled over, leading to a painful argument. "You're just a janitor. Why can't you be someone better?" Emily yelled, her voice choked with anger and hurt. Mike felt the sting of her words cut deep, like a betrayal from his very own flesh and blood. Despite the strain, their community stepped up. Friends and neighbors rallied around Mike with genuine kindness, offering their support. He felt the warmth of their solidarity, yet the weight of his daughter's disappointment pressed heavily on him. The nights were long, wrestling with his fears, and the thought of confronting Carter loomed like a storm cloud. At last, the moment came. The tension bubbled over as Mike stood face to face with Carter, both men representing starkly different worlds. The crowd held its breath, eyes darting between them. Mike felt the blood rush in his ears as his heart pounded fiercely against his chest. "You don't get to belittle us," he declared, his voice steady but filled with fire. He challenged not just the billionaire but the very foundation of privilege that disregarded the hard work of everyday people. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Mike's voice rang clear, challenging Carter's arrogance as he unveiled the true cost of success. Just on the brink of exposing the vulnerabilities behind the billionaire's empire, he caught Emily's gaze again, her face a mixture of hurt and hope. This moment held an electricity that crackled between them, forcing Mike to confront his own fears of inadequacy. Would he reclaim his dignity in Emily's eyes? The question hung in the air, leaving the crowd buzzing with anticipation and the promise of transformation lingering just beyond reach. The crowd shifted, palpable tension wrapping around Mike and Carter like a vice grip. Mike felt the weight of every set of eyes on him, some curious, some condescending, but most, he hoped, searching for courage in his words. Breathing in deeply, he held Emily's gaze, willing her to see that this was not just his fight, it was theirs. "What do you know about real struggle?" Mike continued, his voice rising above the murmurs. "I've spent years cleaning up after the likes of you, working through the night just so my daughter can dream of a better future. You might throw money around like confetti, but there are people out here who work hard for every single dollar." Gasps floated through the crowd. A woman in a sequined gown clutched her pearl necklace, shock etched on her face. Mike's pulse raced, the adrenaline firing through his veins as he found the strength he always felt he lacked in front of Carter. Carter's smirk faded, replaced by an expression Mike had never thought he would witness on such a wealthy man: uncertainty. "This is a charity gala, Mike. You're misplaced here," he shot back, voice laced with irritation. "No," Mike insisted, stepping forward as the crowd parted for him. "You are misplaced in this world of privilege without a hint of empathy. You invited us here to gawk at us, to belittle our worth. But we're more than your pity project." Emily, standing by the ornate staircase, felt a surge of pride ripple through her. Her father was standing up, not just for himself but for everyone who was overlooked and marginalized. She couldn't help herself. She took a cautious step forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling but filled with admiration. "It's not just about you and me," Mike replied, his eyes still locked on Carter. "It's about everyone who feels small in a world that constantly tells them they're less than worthy. I may be a janitor, but I strive every day to be more than that for you. I refuse to accept that my life and hard work is reduced to a punchline." As he spoke, fury turned into vulnerability. He was no longer just a janitor confronting a billionaire. He was a father, fighting for his daughter's future. And in that moment, the room shifted. The murmurs grew into whispers of realization as guests began to reflect on their own lives and choices. Carter's grasp on control was slipping. "Look, Mike, what can you possibly change? You can clean floors, but you can't change society," he sneered, desperation leaking into his bravado. "A janitor's job is not just to clean floors, but to clear pathways," Mike replied, calm and collected. "You see, it might not be glamorous, but it's about purpose. It's about showing up in the faces of those who need us most and saying we matter." The silence hung heavy as Mike's words resonated in the hearts of the audience. Not a single person moved or spoke, as they absorbed the weight of his message. Was this moment of truth powerful enough to challenge the system, to make them reconsider their perceptions of success and humility? Just then, Emily found the courage she so desperately needed. "I believe in my dad," she shouted, her voice trembling but unwavering. The collective gaze shifted, surprise evident as she stood tall. "And if he can stand up to someone like you, then the rest of us can too. We are more than our titles or the money in our bank accounts." A spark ignited in the crowd. Mike felt that hope pulse through him as he locked eyes with his daughter, pride swelling within. The energy shifted, transforming the atmosphere from one of arrogance to reflection. Yet, as the crowd began to nod and murmur in agreement, a flicker of anger sparked in Carter's eyes, and Mike sensed an imminent storm on the horizon. "You think this is over?" Carter bellowed, a mix of fury and disbelief. "You have no idea who you're really dealing with." What lay ahead felt uncertain, but Mike knew one thing for sure: this moment had only just begun. Would the confrontation lead to his downfall or to an unexpected alliance? With his heart racing and eyes set on Emily, Mike prepared to face whatever storm was coming next. Mike squared his shoulders, feeling the air thicken around him. Carter's words dripped with condescension, but for the first time, Mike saw a crack in the facade of the wealthy elite. The fear, the shaky bravado. Carter wasn't the untouchable giant he had always thought. "Who am I dealing with?" Mike asked, stepping closer, adrenaline surging through him. "I'm a man who is tired of being silenced, tired of being dismissed. And you know what? It's time you face the truth." The crowd murmured, some nodding, some still in disbelief, but all eyes were glued to Mike. This was not just a confrontation, it was a reckoning. Every story he had ever held inside him pushed to the forefront, driving him to step into the light. Carter's expression hardened, then twisted into a sneer. "You think you can just come into my world and speak to me like that?" He shot back, voice rising, reflecting the growing tension. "Your world?" Mike laughed lightly, a mix of disbelief and defiance. "It's built on my hard work. Folks like me keep the world turning while you sit back, collecting your profits and pretending you've earned them by being superior. But I have something you don't," Carter a voice, "and I'm not afraid to use it." Emily's heart raced with anticipation. Her dad was taking control, wielding words like weapons. She felt her own confidence bolstered from his courage. This was a fight for their dignity, for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. I know what real toil is, Mike continued, his voice steadying. My hands are calloused from working, my back aches from cleaning up the mess of others. I do it for my daughter and for every child out there dreaming of a chance. If we stop letting fear rule us, how much can we actually change? A whisper of approval rippled through the guests, and Mike could see a shift, uncertainty blooming where once there was only disdain. He seized the moment, raising his voice. Change starts here, tonight. Look around you. We're filled with potential, with resilience. If we can love, if we can work hard, we can stand and demand our place in this world. I refuse to be a joke anymore. As he scanned the crowd, he saw hesitant faces becoming resolute. The woman in the sequined dress lowered her pearls, frowning at Carter now instead of at him. Others shifted, nodding, waking up to the power in their own lives. But then, Carter laughed hard and hollow. You really think this nonsense will amount to anything, Mike? I'll ensure you and your little speech are forgotten by morning. Mike's heart sank for a fleeting moment. Would he ever be taken seriously? But then he remembered Emily's fierce spirit, the fire he felt igniting within him. You can try, he said, forcing a smile, but you'll never erase the power of our voices. You might have money, but we have truth, we have determination, and that's what really matters in the end. A momentary silence followed, as if the world held its breath. But in it lay a magic, a connection that was tangible. Just as hope started to rise among the crowd, something unexpected happened. A man from the back of the room stepped forward, an unexpected ally in a white tie and vest. Mike's right, he said, his voice booming. The crowd turned, astonished. It's time we listen. Hope surged through Mike. But just as victory seemed possible, he caught a flash of panic in Carter's eyes, a realization dawning that this confrontation was far from over. What would Carter do next? Would this spark an uprising, or provoke retaliation from the man who saw power as his only asset? As the tension hung thick in the air, Mike and Emily prepared themselves for a battle that could change everything. The stakes were rising, and they were ready to stand their ground. The moment hung in the air, charged with anticipation. The crowd was poised, a collective breath held between hope and despair. The man in the white tie shifted, his boldness warming the atmosphere. But Carter's laugh cut through, sharp and cruel. Listen to this? He scoffed, waving dismissively at the new ally. Why would we listen to a nobody when we have the real deal right here? He pointed to himself, his voice dripping with arrogance. Mike's heart raced as he glanced at Emily, who stood wide-eyed, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. This was it. This was a chance, a moment that might define them. He took a deep breath and pushed on. Carter, Mike said, forcing the words out like stones from his throat, you might be a somebody to yourself, but your money can't buy respect. It can't buy humanity. Not anymore. He looked out to the crowd, searching for connection. This isn't just about me. It's about us, everyone in this room. Tonight, we're demanding our dignity. Emily felt a spark inside her. Her dad was standing tall, unyielding, and she loved him for it. She could see those in the crowd, people who had always felt small, leaning in. They were hungry for something real. But Carter's expression twisted, anger flashing in his eyes. You think your little speech makes you some kind of hero? You're just trying to play at being brave while the whole world laughs behind your back. That's where you're wrong, Mike shot back, his voice growing stronger. We've been painted as the punchline, the joke. But every time we rise, we knock down the walls you've built. You're scared now, aren't you? That we might actually stand together? Carter fumed, his hands balling into fists. You're forgetting one thing, Mike. I have the power to crush you. People like you don't belong in my world. Then let us change the world. Mike retorted, feeling a surge of courage. Your power is like smoke, Carter. It's only real as long as we let it be. You think money makes you untouchable? Look around. We're the heartbeat of this place. We create, we hope, we fight. And together, we will be heard. With those words, the air shifted again. The room erupted in whispers, approval wrapping around Mike like an embrace. He could see heads nodding, hands raising. The sound of clapping began softly, building up to an echo that filled the space. Emily couldn't contain her excitement. She jumped up and down, eyes shining. Yes. Dad. Keep going. Her voice rang out, clear against the murmurs, fueling the fire. Carter's face paled. You think this is a joke? He spat, but there was a tremor in his voice, a crack in his armor. This isn't over. Maybe not, Mike said, staring him down. But you could have made a choice tonight. You chose to dismiss us, to belittle us. And now, you'll see what happens when we rise together. The clapping grew louder, a rhythm of resolve pounding through the crowd. Mike could see it, the tide turning, nerves replacing apathy as people began to stand, reflect, and even reach for one another. But even in the swell of victory, Mike's heart sank as he noticed Carter moving for the door, power flickering in his eyes like a warning. Panic surged through him. What if Carter came back with even more influence, more resources to silence them? Wait! Mike shouted, desperation creeping in. This isn't just about talking. We need to take action. We need to unite. As the crowd paused, the weight of his words sank in. Would they step forward as one? Would they challenge their fate? Mike looked at Emily, and saw determination mirrored in her gaze. She had always brought him strength. He knew then that whatever happened next, they were in this together. But the uncertainty loomed, like a storm approaching on the horizon. Would the spark ignite, or would it be snuffed back into silence? They stood ready, a collision course set, waiting for what would come next. The atmosphere crackled as Mike's call for unity hung in the air. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Everyone stood still, caught in the web of his words, as though they were suddenly aware of their own strength. The crowd's size felt massive, their potential swirling together like a brewing storm. Then someone stepped forward. It was Alice, a single mother who had worked side jobs to support her family while scraping by. She pushed her way through the throng, her eyes fierce, hands trembling slightly as she raised them in support. You're right, Mike! She shouted, her voice rising above the whispers. Tonight we're here for all of us. The crowd erupted in a cheer, feeling emboldened as Alice spoke. Their unease began to fade, replaced by a sense of community. Mike, buoyed by her courage, felt warmth swell in his chest. He looked around and saw others stepping forward, sharing their stories, their struggles, backing each other like a solid shield. I'm tired of feeling small, shouted a man from the back, his voice filled with pain and urgency. Tired of watching my kids grow up in a world that doesn't care. Another voice chimed in, we have to show them we matter. As more people took turns to speak, their stories stitched together a beautiful tapestry of struggle and defiance. Each heartfelt expression amplified the courage that coursed through the room. Mike stood there, taking it all in, his heart racing. There was something overwhelmingly powerful happening, a wave of hope crashing against the walls that had kept them down for too long. What do we want? Emily cried, her passion igniting the crowd even more. We want change! The crowd responded, voices intertwining like an anthem. What will we do? She shouted, excitement glimmering in her eyes. Stand together! Came the collective reply, louder this time, vibrating with resolve. Mike felt unstoppable, but he could still feel the shadow lurking behind Carter's departure. It was clear this first victory was only a battle in a larger war. Yet the crack in the vault of power felt monumental. Every small step was leading them closer to something significant. Just as this newfound strength built towards a crescendo, the doors burst open, making the crowd jump. Carter strode back in, his clenched jaw making it clear he wouldn't back down easily. He surveyed the scene with a smirk, his confidence seeming more like desperation. Really, a bunch of nobodies thinking they can change things? He mocked, his voice icy. I'll make you regret ever thinking you could stand against me. Mike felt a chill. Why do you care so much about knocking people down? Emily shouted, her voice unwavering. Carter's eyes narrowed. Because I own this world, and you're all just players in a game you don't understand. With that, he stepped closer, menacing. The energy shifted, and uncertainty pricked the corners of Mike's confidence. But instead of tuning out, the crowd surged forward, their backs straightened, defiance carved into their faces. Every game has its rules, Mike said, stepping forward. But sometimes, it's the ones who've been overlooked that change the game entirely. The atmosphere thickened with a crescendo of emotion. The crowd wasn't backing down. They were more than ready. But in that charged moment, could Carter's shadows truly be lifted? As the crowd tightened their grip on each other, ready for the impending confrontation, Mike's heart raced a mix of fear, hope, and determination. He needed to be ready for whatever came next, and this time, they were all in it together. Would they find the strength to dismantle Carter's world of indifference, or would fear take over again? Mike took a breath. This was only the beginning. The crowd hung in a tense silence, Mike's heartbeat echoing in his own ears. Carter's words clawed at him, heavy with disdain, but the unity surrounding him felt like armor. He could see Alice, her eyes blazing, a storm behind them. This was not just about them anymore. It felt like they were all part of something greater. Fight back! Someone shouted from the crowd, and the energy in the room shifted, igniting sparks of courage. They were no longer alone. Each individual presence melded into a fierce entity ready to battle against the patronizing smirk of a man who deemed them irrelevant. We do matter! Mike's voice rang out, clear and powerful, rising above the earlier murmurs. We matter not because of titles or wealth, but because we fight for what is right. His words cascaded through the crowd, building momentum. They erupted in voices filled with passion, fortifying the bond that had just been born. This wasn't just about changing their circumstances, this was about reclaiming their dignity. Carter blinked, momentarily out of his smug stance, but then he laughed, a sharp yell that sliced through the rising tide of determination. Dignity? You think dignity pays the bills? Or puts food on your tables? He jeered, his tone dripping with ridicule. Mike felt anger flicker within him. No, but it's the foundation. Without it, what have we got? His words hung in the air, and the crowd nodded, the pivoting emotion unfurling like a flag ready to catch the wind. They understood. In the corners, worried souls transformed. Eyes shimmered with disbelief and recognition. They didn't just want to survive, they wanted to really live. In that charged atmosphere, suddenly, Emily stepped up again. What do we want? Her voice surged through them, a lit match dropped into dry grass. They roared change. What do we need? She pressed on, conviction shooting through each syllable. Unity, came the resounding answer. The vibration of that word pulsed through the group, erasing the remnants of fear that had lingered like a shadow. Right there in that moment, Mike caught Carter's gaze, and instead of indifference, he saw flickers of worry crossing his features. Perhaps for the first time, he realized that this wasn't just a game to be played. The passionate cries continued, as if they were an unstoppable locomotive. We take our power back. We will be heard. The warmth of that collective will was intoxicating. Mike could feel his own fear weakening under the weight of their shared resolve. It dawned on him that each voice added depth to their collective spirit, forging a bond that couldn't be easily shattered. Suddenly, the moment felt almost too large, as if something monumental was about to happen. The crowd leaned forward, brimming with purpose. What if they really could change things? What if this night marked the beginning of something beyond their wildest dreams? But in the back of his mind, dread still lingered. Carter was far from finished. He could sense the tension after all. Battle lines were drawn. Carter took a step toward them, and their chants faded, replaced by a heavy silence. He scoffed, his facade crumbling just a bit. You think this is just going to happen? I can crush you all under my shoe, and you wouldn't even know it until you're buried. Mike felt a chill run down his spine, yet he wouldn't let fear take root. We won't back down. Together, we are a force you can't ignore. Carter smirked, but there was something darker, more uncertain lighting his eyes. We'll see, he said smoothly. A drop of tension hung in the air, and Mike realized something. The real battle was only just beginning. As he exchanged glances with Alice, Emily, and the others, he knew there was no turning back now. But could their unity hold strong against a force so determined to obliterate them? In that moment, Mike took a firm step forward. Would they emerge victorious, or would their hopes be snuffed out by the night? The atmosphere crackled with tension, thick enough to slice through. Mike's heart raced as Carter's overconfident demeanor began to waver. The crowd vibrated, caught in a current of hope and fear, their breaths held like a collective gasp. He dared to imagine victory, but the uncertainty loomed strange and heavy over the moment. Is this it? Carter started again, an edge to his voice, that gleam of arrogance flickering behind his eyes. You think your little show is strong enough to frighten me? You're just a bunch of lost souls in a rundown hall. A low murmur of dissent rippled through the crowd, their solidarity tugging harder at Mike's heartstrings. This was not just his battle, or even Alice's, it was everyone's. Voices began to echo, each time growing louder. Together! Shouted a burly man standing in the front row, his fists clenched. We stand together, or we fall alone. The words struck a chord. Together! They roared back, their resolve palpable, igniting something fierce within the very walls that contained them. For the first time, Mike felt like they truly were a force. A little more noise, please. I can barely hear the sound of your defeat. Carter taunted, arms crossed. He leaned back as if to flaunt his perceived superiority. But Mike could see the cracks in his facade, a ripple of doubt creeping behind that confident grin. Look at him! Shouted Emily, pointing a finger at Carter. He is afraid. He is afraid of us. The crowd erupted in renewed vigor, the fear melting away as excitement began to swell. We are more than what you think, Mike called, taking advantage of the moment. We are not invisible. We are not powerless. Each word propelled the crowd forward, the energy building until it felt like the ground beneath them pulsed with their collective heartbeat. I will not let him scare us, Alice yelled, her voice rising above the others, full of passion. We've stood in the shadows for too long. No more. The cheers resonated loud enough to rattle the windows. It was like a dam breaking, a flood of anticipation rushing out. Every face shone with determination, hungry for change, ready to fight against the endless cycle of being unheard. Shall we show him just how loud we can be? Mike asked, raising his arms. Yes. Echoed as one. And in that moment, something shifted. Mike felt the weight of the room change. It settled on his shoulders like an embrace. Let us take it to him, he urged, feeling a surge of energy surrounding him. Let us organize, let us reach out. Change won't just come, we will make it happen. People began to rally, organizing small groups, preparing to take the next step. Notes flew, hands reached out, and phone calls were made. The pulse of determination surged, and for the first time in ages, Mike felt something rise up within him. Hope felt real, tangible. Just as they began to forge plans, the digital clock on the wall flickered ominously. A message scrolled across the screen, a name, a time. A board meeting that no one had anticipated, one that could threaten everything they were fighting for. The panic in the crowd was palpable. What do we do? Emily gasped, eyes wide. Together, Mike echoed, more determined than ever. We face him, but we bring our voices. As the crowd nodded, anxious yet resolute, Mike caught Carter's challenging stare. It was the final countdown. The stakes just raised 100-fold. Was this the moment that would define their courage? Or would it become a mere footnote in a battle that had yet to unfold? They had one shot, and it felt like everything was hanging in the balance. Could they unite not just in chant, but in the face of looming adversity? Would the power of their shared strength be enough to take on a titan? The air felt electric, buzzing with a mix of anxiety and determination as Mike stared at the clock. Tick-tock. Each second bore down heavy, underscoring the urgency of their task. He could sense the shared anxiety ripple through the crowd, but that wasn't all he felt. Beneath the fear lurked a fierce desire to prove themselves, to reclaim their power. Everyone! Mike called out, raising his voice above the rest. Listen up. We have a meeting coming up with Carter and his board. They're expecting to silence us, but we're going to show them we won't back down. He caught Alice's eye, and she nodded, fire in her spirit as she stepped forward. We need a plan. We have the passion, now we need strategy. The crowd began to murmur again, the anxiety transforming into a kind of fervent energy, a rallying cry. What do you have in mind? Someone shouted from the back, eager eyes filled with hope. As a group, we know what it means to struggle, Mike began, pacing slightly as he spoke. Let us share our stories. Fill the room with who we are, not just numbers, but voices that matter. What do we want to say to them? We want a chance. Emily chimed in, stepping closer, her courage tangible. A chance to be heard. To show we're not just their charity case. Yes. The crowd erupted, enthusiasm building into a palpable wave. Mike felt his pulse quickening. So we prepare. Let us gather our stories. Every fear, every triumph, bring it all. Let us get ourselves organized. We need to create a collective voice that they can't ignore. Small groups began to form on the edges of the room, people huddling together, exchanging ideas and passion. Laughter, tears, and determination mixed in the air, creating an electric atmosphere of unity that felt like a revolution. And what if they don't listen? A skeptical voice piped up, a middle-aged woman with worry etched across her brow. Her shadowed sadness spoke a different fear, the fear of failure. Then we make them listen, Mike responded, his voice steady. We come together, not just at that meeting but beyond it. We're going to flood their offices, their emails, their calls with who we are. If they want to silence us, we'll be the loudest echo in their ears. The crowd grew ignited, and with every passing moment, their resolve seemed to strengthen. They divided into groups, people standing tall, eager to gather the pieces of their hearts and craft them into something powerful. Mike could see hope everywhere, sparkling in Emily's eyes, radiating from Alice's smile, and bursting forth from the crowd like a tidal wave. But just as they settled into their tasks, the galactic hum of their excitement dropped. In the far corner, a figure moved in the old janitor who sometimes helped around the hall. His worn face displayed wisdom, unyielding and weathered by the years. He shuffled closer, carrying an old mop and a bucket. "Can I say something?" he asked, breaking through palpable silence. Everyone turned, unsure, their hopeful energy colliding with real life in an unexpected way. "Sometimes, it feels like you're all shouting into the void," he started, "and that hurts. It's a hard road. But never lose sight of who you are. Your voices are powerful, and they deserve to be heard, but sometimes you need to find a way to make it personal." His words resonated deeply, a reflection of their journey while imbued with quiet strength. Before anyone could respond, he smiled gently and continued, "Remember, every voice matters, even mine." His presence stilled them for a moment, and as he shuffled away, Mike felt a weight in his chest. Unsure if it was doubt or hope, he knew something had shifted again. They had more to consider, more to gather before they faced Carter. "Let us go deeper," Mike encouraged the group as the old janitor faded into the background. "Let us not just gather stories. Let us find out who we are in this fight. No more hiding." They buzzed around him, whispering ideas and rehearsing their stories as the clock ticked down. For every extraordinary voice among them, there was an unyielding heart that could impact change. But just beyond their gathering, shadowed and silent, was Carter, watching, biding his time. What was brewing behind his steady facade? The next step was looming, and the truth was about to break free. Could they wield their voices against the darkness he embodied? Would their collective heart be their greatest weapon? The meeting was almost here. Could they face what was to come with everything they had? Mike squeezed his hands into fists, feeling the resolve hardening his muscles. The atmosphere in the room buzzed with anticipation. He turned to face the crowd again, searching every face for a sign of determination. "All right," he called out. "We need to connect with each other. Who here believes their story can spark something? Who is brave enough to step up and share?" Emily raised her hand immediately. "I'll go first." She took a deep breath and stepped into the center of the circle they had formed. As she began, her voice trembled slightly but quickly steadied. My name is Emily, and for years I felt invisible, like my life was a series of missed opportunities. Being dismissed is more than just words, it sinks into your bones. The room was silent. People leaned in, hanging on to her words. I used to think I could change things alone. I was scared. But recently I realized that hiding won't bring the change I need. It's about reaching out and being seen. This fight isn't just for me, it's for all of us. As she spoke, Mike noticed some people wiping their eyes. Her courage was contagious, washing over the crowd like a warm tide. Thank you, Emily, Mike said, his heart swelling with pride. Who's next? We need more voices, more stories. One by one, others joined Emily, sharing tales of struggle, joy, and lost dreams. Alice spoke passionately about overcoming her fears and taking her child from a toxic situation. A man in the corner, his face rough and lined, talked about losing his job and the resulting despair, while also shining a light on the bravery that came from rebuilding his life from scratch. With each story, shadows fell away, replaced by the soft glow of vulnerability. They were no longer simply advocating for their rights. They were sharing pieces of their lives. As they shared, Mike felt energy shift in the room. Hope was igniting like fireworks within them, a collective spark fueling their ambitions. Yet, an undercurrent of fear remained. They knew they had to face Carter, and that was no small task. Keep going, he urged. Remember, this isn't just about the meeting. This is the beginning of something bigger, a movement. Let us keep this momentum. And so, they pressed on, pouring their hearts out, unaware of the figure still lurking at the door. Carter stood on the edge, listening, his expression inscrutable. Just as a voice quivered out with a powerful message of unity, Carter stepped into the room. The crowd froze, their collective breath caught in a tight ball of anxiety and defiance. Impressive, he said, his tone smooth and mocking, devoid of warmth. But how do you plan to convince me that you're worth hearing? Every heart sank. The ice-cold reality of the situation loomed large. Mike resolved to respond with strength, but his mind raced. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a voice cut through the silence, a deep, warm timbre that resonated in the space. It's not about convincing you, Carter. It's about showing you who we really are. Everyone turned as the old janitor stepped into the center, the mop in his hands now forgotten. We're not just your laborers. We are human beings, filled with stories, love, and strength. This moment isn't just for us, it's for everyone we represent. Awed silence swept through the room. Mike felt a rush of energy surging back, and he locked eyes with Alice, who whispered, "He's right." Could this unexpected ally really turn the tide? They all understood the stakes were high, but maybe together, with newfound strength, they could prove to Carter that every voice matters. But as tension thickened and emotion soared, would they muster the courage to take on the battle ahead, or would fear still hold them captive in shadows? Mike could feel the electric energy pulse through the room, bringing together their shared resolve and renewed sense of purpose. The old janitor stood in the middle, radiating an unshakable calm. His presence seemed to anchor them, and for a moment, uncertainty faded into bravery. Carter, however, wore a smirk that threatened to crush their spirits. "You think a few stories can change my mind? I've dealt with nobodies my entire life," he barked, looking down at them as if they were mere shadows. But Mike caught the ember that had sparked in the crowd when the janitor spoke. He stepped forward, his resolve amplifying with every heartbeat. "You underestimate us, Carter," he called out, steady and strong. "These aren't just stories. They are lives. They hold weight. They hold power. You cannot silence them anymore." The crowd tightened in unity, their collective heartbeat rising like a drumroll, like the crescendo of an anthem. Emily stood tall beside her father. "We're tired of being disregarded. We are here to stand for every person you think is invisible." Head nodding, hands clenching, the group transformed. There was a fire igniting within people who had for so long felt put down. An overwhelming tide of voices rose, chanting, "We matter! We matter! We matter! Carter bristled, his composure cracking under the pressure of their solidarity. The smirk melted away as the crowd's power grew tangible, every heartbeat, every clap pushing him back a little more. Enough! He shouted, but his voice hung weakly in the air, swallowed by the unity that filled the space. You're just a movement of loud voices. You think you can shake my empire with words? I have connections. And we have each other. Mike shot back, drawing the circle of those gathered closer with the strength of his voice. You mistake our unity for noise. It's clarity. It's resolve. It's the sound of true determination. The room vibrated, and for the first time, the fear of defeat scattered in the light of unity illuminating all their faces. The energy flowed like a current, pushing against the darkness Carter cultivated. Facing them now, the old janitor nodded slowly, standing beside Mike like a shield. Your lives are worth more than the numbers on a spreadsheet or the market value of a building, Carter. This is about dignity, about respect, about lifting one another. That simple truth rang like a bell, so clear, cutting through the tension hanging thick in the air. The energy shifted, buzzing, hope wrapped around them like a blanket, knitting their shared vision for what could be. Carter stepped back, fists clenching, visibly frustrated. Even if you chant louder, it won't change the fact that I can bury you financially. You're just a moment of noise. What will it take, Carter? A revolution? Emily shouted, her voice unwavering. You dismiss our worth because you equate life with dollars. But our stories, our lives have infinitely more value. The atmosphere shifted even more, transforming from fear into a fighting spirit, the kind that can topple giants. Mike felt shivers of excitement race down his arms. What we want is our place at the table. We want change, he echoed, feeling the crowd surge behind him. A collective roar exploded. The sound soared, filled the grand hall, bouncing off the polished walls a wave of furious, sweet determination. Mike felt it course through him. Carter gritted his teeth, frustration boiling over. The arrogance fell away to reveal raw unease. This is just a blip. You'll forget this even happened, he shouted, attempting to reclaim control. But something crucial had happened. The crowd felt it, the shift in the tides. Together they had transformed from the overlooked to the unbreakable. Everyone in this room matters, Mike called out, holding Emily's gaze with resolve. And it's time to reclaim our power. This isn't just our story, we are a force to be reckoned with. As one, the crowd began to chant again, louder this time, each voice weaving into a powerful echo. We matter! We matter! We matter! Carter's eyes widened, realization dawning. Perhaps this fight wouldn't just fizzle away as he'd hoped. They were more than just a fleeting moment. They were a movement, an unmistakable wave rolling toward change. Let us go! Mike shouted, determination propelling him forward. He felt like a general rallying his troops, arms raised high. This is just the beginning. Let us form our own future, together. And with that they surged forward, every person confident in their worth, indivisible by the dislike of a man who couldn't see beyond his own privilege. They stepped into a collective destiny, the room sparkling with hope, arms entwined. Mike was fully aware that this was just the first step of many to take. But they had gained momentum, a monumental shift that felt like a promise taking shape. Together they could forge a path that led not just to revolution but to a better life for all. As they left that night, shoulders high and hearts alight, every voice counted, every story resonating in a world that had felt dim for so long. They were ready to show that together, they would never be dismissed again. Remember to subscribe immediately if you're inspired by this journey, and don't want to miss the next exclusive stories. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment below how this ending made you feel, and share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.